It's another edition of Time About the Movies. We're wrapping up 1992 this time around, looking at Christmas weekend 1992, December 25th. Let's go ahead and get to it. We've got 6 movies to look at. Let's get to it. Let's finish the year off and start off with Danny DeVito's directorial effort, in which he co-stars with Jack Nicholson about the legendary Jimmy Hoffa, called Hoffa. Compared to Danny DeVito's other directorial efforts, Hoffa's kind of the one that's seen as the mixed bag. Not a lot of people really liked it. Some people liked it because of Nicholson's performance, but everybody else thought it was just kind of dragged on too long. Even Nicholson's performance was heavily criticized. I really like this movie a lot. I don't think it's as good as something like The War of the Roses or Throw Mama from the Train, but there's a lot of great things about this movie that I really do like. I like Jack Nicholson's performance in this. I like Danny DeVito's performance in this. This has a great cast that includes John C. Reilly, Robert Prowse, Armand Assante, J.T. Walsh. Just a great cast overall. Visually, the movie looks incredible. Like, this isn't Barry Sonnenfeld who did War of the Roses and Throw Mama from the Train. This is actually Stephen H. Burham who did the cinematography for this, and I think he did a fantastic job with these scenes, because there's so many great scenes in this movie that are really nicely done. They're like, you could frame some of these as pictures and put them up on your wall at times. They're so good. The music overall is very good too, by David Newman, and you got a great script by David Mamet. I mean, David Mamet usually doesn't turn in really bad material most of the time. There's been some times when, of course, he does, but we'll eventually get to those ones. But I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I think a lot of people kind of give it too much of a bad rap, because honestly, there is a lot more to enjoy about this movie than I would think a lot of people would give it credit for. No, it's not as good as War of the Roses. No, it's not as good as Throw Mama from the Train. But it is still a very good, well-made film from Danny DeVito. I think he did a phenomenal job with this. Very underrated movie. Definitely check this one out if you can. With that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie. We have Bill Paxton, William Sadler, Ice-T, and Ice Cube starring in Walter Hill's Trespass. So Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, who you of course know from the Back to the Future movies, actually wrote this years before they did Back to the Future. In fact, they envisioned Walter Hill to direct a movie like this back in the 1970s. And I guess it took them, after the success of the Back to the Future series, as well as Zemeckis' name getting bigger and bigger, to finally get this movie made. And I think the end result is actually a pretty good, underrated action movie. You got Bill Paxton and William Sadler in here as these two firemen who try to find this treasure, and they end up getting involved with Ice-T and Ice Cube's characters in this battle in this abandoned building. And it's a really good, intense action movie. It's a well done film overall, with a lot of great acting from these great people involved, and it's just a ton of fun too. The tension is very, very good in this. You really don't know how it's going to turn out in the end. It's a very good, well-made film. It sadly didn't do well because I think, well, for one thing, you put it out on Christmas weekend, and movies like this don't usually do very well for the most part, except of course, if it's a big budget action movie like something from Marvel or DC. Putting this down on Christmas, I think, really dampened this movie's potential at the box office, but I'm glad to see that the movie has found an audience coming after this movie came out, and I think they have seen that this movie actually does have a lot of merit to it. I think it's a very good, underrated movie, one of Walter Hill's more underrated movies in a time where his name was kind of dampering down a little bit, but this is still a very good film. If you haven't seen Trespass, I'd say definitely check it out if you can. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Al Pacino in Scent of a Woman. I mean, from Martin Brest, the guy who had done comedies such as Beverly Hills Cop and Midnight Run, this was kind of more of his first more of his straighter dramatic movie, and it pays off pretty well. I mean, everybody remembers this movie specifically for Al Pacino. This was the movie where he finally won an Academy Award for Best Actor, rightfully so. I think he was great in this movie. There's also a great cast involving Chris O'Donnell, who I think does a very good job keeping up with Pacino in this. You have Philip Seymour Hoffman in here, James Rebhorn, Gabrielle Anwar, who would later be in For Love or Money, and then later on in Burn Notice. Just a great cast overall. The movie looks very visually stunning, and I didn't know. I completely forgot about this. This is a movie that takes place around Thanksgiving, so this is one of those rare Thanksgiving movies that we got that actually are really good. The other one being, of course, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and yeah, it's a well-made film. It's a great acted film. Pacino shows why he deserved the Oscar for this movie, and it's a terrific film overall. I think his performance in Glengarry Glen Ross is a little bit better, but he really shows why he deserves to win an Oscar at some point in his career. Because I don't think he ever won one at this point. Did he ever win one at this point? I need to double check this, and I'm gonna do this while I'm on here. So let's see. I don't think he did. I know he was nominated for The Godfather, and okay, he did. Okay, it was one. This was the one. So I was right all along. uh, but yeah, Son of a Woman. It's another one that if you haven't seen it already, you really are doing yourself a disservice by not doing it. So anyway, let's move on to the next movie, and that's Kenneth Branagh's Peter's Friends. So I think this is one of Kenneth Branagh's more underrated movies. This is a movie that not a lot of people really talk about. Kind of came early on in his career after Henry V and Dead Again. Doesn't really get talked a whole lot, but I really enjoyed this movie. I found this movie on TV a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed it a lot. Mostly because I love the chemistry between all these people that are at this house: Hugh Laurie, Kenneth Branagh, Stephen Fry, Emma Thompson, Amelia Staunton. I think they all do a very good job making these characters relatable and really likable. I think a lot of people didn't get it because didn't really enjoy it because it doesn't feel like a typical Kenneth Branagh movie. It feels like an ensemble movie you would see from another director. But I mean, Kenneth Branagh really knows his stuff when he makes movies like this, and really this movie works pretty well with the material that he has to work with and this cast that works so well. I mean, it's a great film overall. It's a very underrated movie. If you haven't seen Peter's Friends, definitely check it out, especially if you love seeing these actors in here. I think you really will enjoy this movie, and you'll see it's one of his more underrated movies as a filmmaker. So that's Peter's Friends. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that's Jeremy Irons and Julia Binoche in Louis Malle's Damage. So really, you can kind of figure out what the premise is going to be. Jeremy Irons is this British politician. He has a sexual relationship with his son's soon-to-be fiance, and he becomes obsessed with her. And and like I said, you can kind of tell where it's going to go. But really, that's kind of the fun of this movie, mostly because you enjoy it with the actors involved in this. I think Jeremy Irons gives one of his best performances in here. This is a great cast. It also includes Juliette Binoche and Miranda Richardson. And Louis Malle, who had done My Dinner with Andre, I think this was his first movie he made for not an American audience, an English audience since My Dinner with Andre. I could be wrong on that because I'm looking at his bibliography here, and let me see. Oh no, I take that back. There are a couple of other ones here, Crackers and Alamo Bay, but this one I think was his more successful one since My Dinner with Andre. And it's a really good movie. It's a very tense thriller. Irons gives a great performance. I think the overall performances in this really work so well, and the twist in here is so good in this movie. It's a very good twist that you don't see coming at all, and it's very well done. It's a very well made film, really underrated movie. Definitely check it out if you can. Damage, great movie by Louis Malle and starring Jeremy Irons. So, with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the last movie, and that is Richard Attenborough's Chaplin. So here we have another movie that's very underrated, I think. A lot of people didn't really give it the proper respect back then. It was mostly seen as kind of a mixed bag of a movie, but this is another one of those movies that I really love. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I think this is a absolutely wonderful film directed by Richard Attenborough, who had done other movies like Cry Free. By this point, of course, he's best known for Gandhi, but he did A Chorus Line, Cry Freedom. Very good movies that didn't get the proper respect they deserve, kind of like with this movie. And it just works because of Robert Downey Jr. I think he really shows everybody that he can handle a big role like this. It's just because this was one of his first major film roles where he had the leading role. And Robert Downey Jr. I think makes this work so well. I see here that that Richard Attenborough also looked at wanting to get maybe somebody like Robin Williams or Billy Crystal, Jim Carrey for this role, even Tom Cruise, which probably could have worked, but I don't know, man. I think Robert Downey Jr. himself just makes this work so well, and he really shows everybody how good of a performance he can be. I think he's terrific in this film. This has got a great cast overall. You not only have him, you got Marissa Tomei, Moira Kelly, Anthony Hopkins, Dan Aykroyd, Penelope Ann Miller, Kevin Kline, Mila Jovovich, Kevin Dunn, Nancy Travis, Diane Lane, James Woods, David Duchovny. Just a strong cast overall. Visually, the movie looks impressive. I think it does a pretty good job telling the story of Chaplin's life, and at times, yes, it can be a little too formulaic and made for a typical biopic, but it's a well-made film. It's a visually stunning movie. I keep going back to this movie every couple of years because I want to watch this again to see what I think is one of Downey Jr.'s best, strongest performances. And really, it's a terrific film overall. If you haven't seen Chaplin, please do yourself a favor and go check this one out. You will not be disappointed by this one whatsoever. Chaplin, fantastic film, and a great way to end the year off. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and we wrap up another year in the books. Next time we meet, we'll jump into 1993, and that will be part of our Time About the Movies weekend, which will be taking place next weekend, where I'll be putting out as many episodes as I can to make sure that we get a certain amount of episodes put out. I want to try to get at least 20 episodes out for next Saturday and next Sunday. And there's going to be some movies to look. There's going to be a lot of movies to look at, a lot of episodes to get to. The next episode you'll see, we'll be looking at Lorenzo's Oil from director George Miller, and that will kick off 1993. So, thank you guys for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, check out the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and remember, Time About the Movies weekend starts next Saturday, so be on the lookout for that. I will see you guys next week for another episode. So, thank you for watching. I'll see you then, and until then, take care.